Third part. Ye look aloft when ye long for exaltation, and I look downward because I am exalted. Who among you can at the same time laugh and be exalted? He who climbeth on the highest mountains laugheth at all tragic plays and tragic realities. Zarathustra. 1. Reading and Writing. The Wanderer. Then, when it was about midnight, Zarathustra went his way over the ridge of the isle, that he might arrive early in the morning at the other coast, because there he meant to embark. For there was a good roadstead there, in which foreign ships also liked to anchor. Those ships took many people with them, who wished to cross over from the Happy Isles. So when Zarathustra thus ascended the mountain, he thought on the way of his many solitary wanderings from youth onwards, and how many mountains and ridges and summits he had already climbed. I am a wanderer and mountain climber, said he to his heart. I love not the plains, and it seemeth I cannot long sit still. And whatever may still overtake me as fate and experience, a wandering will be therein, and a mountain climbing. In the end one experienceth only oneself. The time is now past when accidents could befall me, and what could now fall to my lot which would not already be mine own. It returneth only, it cometh home to me at last, mine own self, and such of it as hath been long abroad, and scattered among things and accidents. And one thing more do I know. I stand now before my last summit, and before that which hath been longest reserved for me. Ah, my hardest path must I ascend. Ah, I have begun my lonesomest wandering. He, however, who is of my nature doth not avoid such an hour, the hour that saith unto him, Now only dost thou go the way to thy greatness. Summit and abyss, these are now comprised together. Thou goest the way to thy greatness. Now hath it become thy last refuge. What was hitherto thy last danger? Thou goest the way to thy greatness. It must now be thy best courage that there is no longer any path behind thee. Thou goest the way to thy greatness. Here shall no one steal after thee. Thy foot itself hath effaced the path behind thee, and over it standeth written, Impossibility. And if all ladders henceforth fail thee, then must thou learn to mount upon thine own head. How couldst thou mount upward otherwise? Upon thine own head and beyond thine own heart, now must the gentlest in thee become the hardest. He who hath always much indulged himself, sickeneth at last by his much indulgence. Praise is on what maketh hardy. I do not praise the land where butter and honey flow. To learn to look away from oneself is necessary in order to see many things. This hardiness is needed by every mountain climber. He, however, who is obtrusive with his eyes as a discerner, how can he ever see more of anything than its foreground? But thou, O Zarathustra, wouldst view the ground of everything, and its background. Thus must thou mount even above thyself, upwards, until thou hast even thy stars under thee. Yea, to look down upon myself and even upon my stars, that only would I call my summit, that hath remained for me as my last summit. Thus spake Zarathustra to himself while ascending, comforting his heart with harsh maxims, for he was sore at heart as he had never been before. And when he had reached the top of the mountain ridge, behold, there lay the other sea spread out before him, and he stood still and was long silent. The night, however, was cold at this height, and clear and starry. I recognize my destiny, said he at last, sadly. Well, I am ready. Now hath my last lonesomeness begun. Ah, this sombre, sad sea below me. Ah, this sombre nocturnal vexation. Ah, fate and sea, to you must I now go down. Before my highest mountain do I stand, and before my longest wandering. Therefore must I first go deeper down than I ever ascended, deeper down into pain than I ever ascended, even into its darkest flood. So willeth my fate. Well, I am ready. Whence come the highest mountains? So did I once ask. Then did I learn that they come out of the sea. That testimony is inscribed on their stones, and on the walls of their summits. Out of the deepest must the highest come to its height. Thus spake Zarathustra on the ridge of the mountain where it was cold. When, however, he came into the vicinity of the sea, and at last stood alone amongst the cliffs, then had he become weary on his way, and eagerer than ever before. Everything as yet sleepeth, said he, even the sea sleepeth. Drowsily and strangely doth its eye gaze upon me, but it breatheth warmly, I feel it, and I feel also that it dreameth. It tosseth about dreamily on hard pillows. Hark, hark, how it groaneth with evil recollections, or evil expectations. Ah, I am sad along with thee, thou dusky monster, and angry with myself even for thy sake. Ah, that my hand hath not strength enough. Gladly, indeed, would I free thee from evil dreams. And while Zarathustra thus spake, he laughed at himself with melancholy and bitterness. What, Zarathustra, said he, wilt thou even sing consolation to the sea? Ah, thou amiable fool, Zarathustra, thou too blindly confiding one, but thus hast thou ever been. Ever hast thou approached confidently all that is terrible. Every monster wouldst thou caress, a whiff of warm breath, a little soft tuft on its paw, and immediately wert thou ready to love and lure it. Love is the danger of the lonesomest one. Love to anything, if it only live. Laughable, verily, is my folly and my modesty in love. Thus spake Zarathustra, and laughed thereby a second time. Then, however, he thought of his abandoned friends, and as if he had done them a wrong with his thoughts, he upbraided himself because of his thoughts. And forthwith it came to pass that the laughter wept. With anger and longing wept Zarathustra bitterly. The Vision and the Enigma. When it got abroad among the sailors that Zarathustra was on board the ship, for a man who came from the Happy Isles had gone on board along with him, there was great curiosity and expectation. But Zarathustra kept silent for 2 days, and was cold and deaf with sadness, so that he neither answered looks nor questions. On the evening of the 2nd day, however, he again opened his ears, though he still kept silent, for there were many curious and dangerous things to be heard on board the ship, which came from afar, and was to go still further. Zarathustra, however, was fond of all those who make distant voyages, and dislike to live without danger. And behold, when listening, his own tongue was at last loosened, and the ice of his heart broke. Then did he begin to speak thus: To you, the daring venturers and adventurers, and whoever hath embarked with cunning sails upon frightful seas, to you, the enigma intoxicated, the twilight enjoyers, whose souls are allured by flutes to every treacherous gulf. For ye dislike to grope at a thread with cowardly hand, and where ye can divine, there do ye hate to calculate. To you only do I tell the enigma that I saw, the vision of the lonesomest one. Gloomily walked I lately in corpse-colored twilight, gloomily and sternly, with compressed lips. Not only one sun had set for me. A path which ascended daringly among boulders, an evil, lonesome path, which neither herb nor shrub any longer cheered, a mountain path, crunched under the daring of my foot, mutely marching over the scornful clinking of pebbles, trampling the stone that let it slip. Thus did my foot force its way upwards, in spite of the spirit that drew it downwards, towards the abyss, the spirit of gravity, my devil and arch-enemy. Had I ever seen so much loathing and pale horror on one countenance? Upwards, although it sat upon me, half dwarf, half mole, paralyzing, dripping lead in mine ear, and thoughts like drops of lead into my brain. O Zarathustra, it whispered scornfully, syllable by syllable, thou stone of wisdom, thou threwest thyself high, but every thrown stone must fall. O Zarathustra, thou stone of wisdom, thou sling stone, thou star destroyer, thyself threwest thou so high, but every thrown stone must fall. Condemned of thyself, and to thine own stoning, O Zarathustra, far indeed threwest thou thy stone, but upon thyself will it recoil. Then was the dwarf silent, and it lasted long. The silence, however, oppressed me, and to be thus in pairs, one is verily lonesomer than when alone. I ascended, I dreamt, I thought, but everything oppressed me. A sick one did I resemble, whom bad torture wearieth, and a worse dream reawakeneth out of his first sleep. But there is something in me which I call courage. It hath hitherto slain for me every dejection. This courage at last bade me stand still and say, Dwarf, thou or I? For courage is the best slayer, courage which attacketh, for in every attack there is sound of triumph. Man, however, is the most courageous animal, thereby hath he overcome every animal, with sound of triumph hath he overcome every pain. Human pain, however, is the sorest pain. Courage slayeth also giddiness at abysses, and where doth man not stand at abysses? Is not seeing itself seeing abysses? Courage is the best slayer. Courage slayeth also fellow suffering. Fellow suffering, however, is the deepest abyss. As deeply as man looketh into life, so deeply also doth he look into suffering. Courage, however, is the best slayer. Courage which attacketh, it slayeth even death itself, for it saith, Was that life? Well, once more. In such speech, however, there is much sound of triumph. He who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Halt, dwarf, said I, either I or thou. I, however, am the stronger of the two. Thou knowest not mine abysmal thought. It couldst thou not endure. Then happened that which made me lighter, for the dwarf sprang from my shoulder, the prying sprite, and it squatted on a stone in front of me. There was, however, a gateway just where we halted. Look at this gateway, dwarf, I continued. It hath two faces. 2 roads come together here. These hath no one yet gone to the end of. This long lane backwards, it continueth for an eternity, and that long lane forward, that is another eternity. They are antithetical to one another, these roads. They directly abut on one another. And it is here, at this gateway, that they come together. The name of the gateway is inscribed above, This Moment. But should one follow them further, and ever further and further on, thinkest thou, dwarf, that these roads would be eternally antithetical? Everything straight lieth, murmured the dwarf contemptuously. All truth is crooked. Time itself is a circle. Thou spirit of gravity, said I wrathfully, do not take it too lightly, or I shall let thee squat where thou squattest, halt foot, and I carried thee high. Observe, continued I, this moment. From the gateway, this moment, there runneth a long eternal lane backwards. Behind us lieth in eternity. Must not whatever can run its course of all things have already run along that lane? Must not whatever can happen of all things have already happened, resulted, and gone by? and if everything have already existed, what thinkest thou, dwarf, of this moment? Must not this gateway also have already existed? And are not all things closely bound together in such wise that this moment draweth all coming things after it, consequently itself also? For whatever can run its course of all things, also in this long lane outward must it once more run. And this slow spider which creepeth in the moonlight, and this moonlight itself, and thou and I in this gateway whispering together, whispering of eternal things, must we not all have already existed? And must we not return and run in that other lane out before us, that long weird lane? Must we not eternally return? Thus did I speak, and always more softly, for I was afraid of mine own thoughts and arrear thoughts. Then suddenly did I hear a dog howl near me. Had I ever heard a dog howl thus? My thoughts ran back. Yes, when I was a child, in my most distant childhood. Then did I hear a dog howl thus, and saw it also, with hair bristling, its head upwards, trembling in the stillest midnight, when even dogs believe in ghosts, so that it excited my commiseration. For just then went the full moon, silent as death, over the house. Just then did it stand still, a glowing globe, at rest on the flat roof, as if on someone's property. Thereby had the dog been terrified, for dogs believe in thieves and ghosts. And when I again heard such howling, then did it excite my commiseration once more. Where was now the dwarf, and the gateway, and the spider, and all the whispering? Had I dreamt? Had I awakened? Twixt rugged rocks did I suddenly stand alone, dreary in the dreariest moonlight. But there lay a man, and there the dog leaping, bristling, whining. Now did it see me coming, then did it howl again, then did it cry. Had I ever heard a dog cry so for help? And verily what I saw, the like had I never seen. A young shepherd did I see, writhing, choking, quivering, with distorted countenance, and with a heavy black serpent hanging out of his mouth. Had I ever seen so much loathing and pale horror on one countenance? He had perhaps gone to sleep. Then had the serpent crawled into his throat. There had it bitten itself fast. My hand pulled at the serpent, and pulled in vain. I failed to pull the serpent out of his throat. Then there cried out of me, "Bite, bite, its head off, bite." So cried it out of me, my horror, my hatred, my loathing, my pity, all my good and my bad cried with one voice out of me. Ye daring ones around me, ye venturers and adventurers, and whoever of you have embarked with cunning sails on unexplored seas, ye enigma enjoyers, solve unto me the enigma that I then beheld. Interpret unto me the vision of the lonesomest one, for it was a vision and a foresight. What did I then behold in parable, and who is it that must come some day? Who is the shepherd into whose throat the serpent thus crawled? Who is the man into whose throat all the heaviest and blackest will thus crawl? The shepherd, however, bit as my cry had admonished him. He bit with a strong bite. Far away did he spit the head of the serpent, and sprang up. No longer shepherd, no longer man, a transfigured being, a light-surrounded being, that laughed. Never on earth laughed a man as he laughed. O my brethren, I heard a laughter which was no human laughter, and now gnaweth a thirst at me, a longing that is never allayed. My longing for that laughter gnaweth at me. Oh, how can I still endure to live, and how could I endure to die at present? Thus spake Zarathustra. Involuntary bliss. With such enigmas and bitterness in his heart did Zarathustra sail over the sea, when however he was 4-day journeys from the Happy Isles, and from his friends, then had he surmounted all his pain. Triumphantly and with firm foot did he again accept his fate, and then talked Zarathustra in this wise to his exulting conscience. Alone am I again, and like to be so, alone with the pure heaven and the open sea, and again is the afternoon around me. On an afternoon did I find my friends for the first time. On an afternoon also did I find them a second time, at the hour when all light becometh stiller. For whatever happiness is still on its way twixt heaven and earth, now seeketh for lodging a luminous soul. With happiness hath all light now become stiller. O afternoon of my life, once did my happiness also descend to the valley that it might seek a lodging. Then did it find those open hospitable souls. O afternoon of my life, what did I not surrender that I might have one thing, this living plantation of my thoughts, and this dawn of my highest hope? Companions did the creating one once seek, and children of his hope, and lo, it turned out that he could not find them, except he himself should first create them. Thus am I in the midst of my work, to my children going, and from them returning. For the sake of his children must Zarathustra perfect himself. For in one's heart one loveth only one's child and one's work. And where there is great love to oneself, then is it the sign of pregnancy, so have I found it. Still are my children verdant in their first spring, standing nigh one another, and shaken in common by the winds, the trees of my garden and of my best soil. And verily, there such trees stand beside one another. There are happy isles, but one day will I take them up, and put each by itself alone, that it may learn lonesomeness, and defiance, and prudence. Gnarled and crooked, and with flexible hardness, shall it then stand by the sea, a living lighthouse of unconquerable life. Yonder where the storms rush down into the sea, and the snout of the mountain drinketh water, shall each on a time have his day and night watches, for his testing and recognition. Recognized and tested shall each be, to see if he be of my type and lineage. If he be master of a long will, silent even when he speaketh, and giving in such wise that he taketh in giving, so that he may one day become my companion, a fellow creator and fellow enjoyer with Zarathustra, such a one as writeth my will on my tables, for the fuller perfection of all things. And for his sake, and for those like him, must I perfect myself. Therefore do I now avoid my happiness, and present myself to every misfortune, for my final testing and recognition. And verily it were time that I went away, and the wanderer's shadow and longest tedium and the stillest hour have all said unto me, it is the highest time. The word blew to me through the keyhole and said, come. The door sprang subtly open unto me and said, go. But I lay enchained to my love for my children. Desire spread this snare for me, the desire for love, that I should become the prey of my children and lose myself in them. Desiring, that is now for me to have lost myself. I possess you, my children. In this possessing shall everything be assurance and nothing desire. But brooding lay the sun of my love upon me. In his own juice stewed Zarathustra. Then did shadows and doubts fly past me. For frost and winter I now longed. Oh, that frost and winter would again make me crack and crunch, sighed I. Then arose icy mist out of me. My past burst its tomb. Many pains buried alive woke up. Fully slept had they merely, concealed in corpse clothes. So called everything unto me in signs, it is time. But I heard not, until at last mine abyss moved, and my thought bit me. Ah, abysmal thought, which art my thought! When shall I find strength to hear thee burrowing and no longer tremble? To my very throat throbbeth my heart when I hear thee burrowing. Thy muteness even is like to strangle me, thou abysmal mute one. As yet have I never ventured to call thee up. It hath been enough that I have carried thee about with me. As yet have I not been strong enough for my final lion wantonness and playfulness. Sufficiently formidable unto me hath thy weight ever been. But one day shall I yet find the strength and the lion's voice which will call thee up. When I shall have surmounted myself therein, then will I surmount myself also in that which is greater, and a victory shall be the seal of my perfection. Meanwhile do I sail along on uncertain seas. Chance flattereth me, smooth-tongued chance. Forward and backward do I gaze. Still see I no end. As yet hath the hour of my final struggle not come to me, or doth it come to me perhaps just now? Verily, with insidious beauty do sea and life gaze upon me round about. O afternoon of my life, O happiness before event-tide, O haven upon high seas, O peace in uncertainty, how I distrust all of you! Verily distrustful am I of your insidious beauty. Like the lover am I, who distrusteth too sleek smiling. As he pusheth the best beloved before him, tender even in severity, the jealous one, so do I push this blissful hour before me. Away with thee, thou blissful hour! With thee hath there come to me an involuntary bliss. Ready for my severest pain do I here stand. At the wrong time hast thou come. Away with thee, thou blissful hour! Rather harbour there, with my children, hasten, and bless them before event-tide with my happiness. There already approacheth event-tide, the sun sinketh. Away, my happiness! Thus spake Zarathustra, and he waited for his misfortune the whole night, but he waited in vain. The night remained clear and calm, and happiness itself came nigher and nigher unto him. Towards morning, however, Zarathustra laughed to his heart and said mockingly, "Happiness runneth after me. That is because I do not run after women. Happiness, however, is a woman." Before sunrise. O heaven above me, thou pure, thou deep heaven, thou abyss of light! Gazing on thee, I tremble with divine desires. Up to thy height to toss myself, that is my depth. In thy purity to hide myself, that is mine innocence. The god veileth his beauty, thus hidest thou thy stars. Thou speakest not, thus proclaimest thou thy wisdom unto me. Mute over the raging sea hast thou risen for me today. Thy love and thy modesty make a revelation unto my raging soul. In that thou camest unto me beautiful, veiled in thy beauty, in that thou spakest unto me mutely, obvious in thy wisdom. Oh, how could I fail to divine all the modesty of thy soul? Before the sun didst thou come unto me, the lonesomest one. We have been friends from the beginning. To us are grief, gruesomeness, and ground common. Even the sun is common to us. We do not speak to each other, because we know too much. We keep silent to each other. We smile our knowledge to each other. Art thou not the light of my fire? Hast thou not the sister soul of mine insight? Together did we learn everything. Together did we learn to ascend beyond ourselves to ourselves, and to smile uncloudedly. Uncloudedly to smile down out of luminous eyes and out of miles of distance. When under us constraint and purpose and guilt steam like rain, and wandered I alone, for what did my soul hunger by night and in labyrinthine paths? And climbed I mountains, whom did I ever seek, if not thee, upon mountains? And all my wandering and mountain climbing, a necessity was it merely, and a makeshift of the unhandy one, to fly only, wanteth mine entire will to fly into thee. And what have I hated more than passing clouds? And whatever tainteth thee? And mine own hatred have I even hated, because it tainted thee. The passing clouds I detest, those stealthy cats of prey. They take from thee and me what is common to us, the vast, unbounded yea and amen saying. These mediators and mixers we detest, the passing clouds, those half and half ones, that have neither learned to bless nor to curse from the heart. Rather will I sit in a tub under a closed heaven, rather will I sit in the abyss without heaven, than see thee, thou luminous heaven, tainted with passing clouds. And oft have I longed to pin them fast with the jagged gold wires of lightning, that I might, like the thunder, beat the drum upon their kettle bellies. An angry drummer, because they rob me of thy yea and amen. Thou heaven above me, thou pure, thou luminous heaven, thou abyss of light, because they rob thee of my yea and amen. For rather will I have noise and thunders and tempest blasts, than this discreet, doubting cat repose. And also amongst men do I hate most of all the soft treaders and half ones, and the doubting, hesitating, passing clouds. And he who cannot bless shall learn to curse, this clear teaching dropped unto me from the clear heaven. This star standeth in my heaven even in dark nights. I, however, am a blesser and a yea-sayer, if thou be but around me, thou pure, thou luminous heaven. Thou abyss of light, into all abysses do I then carry my beneficent yea-saying. A blesser have I become and a yea-sayer, and therefore strove I long, and was a striver, that I might one day get my hands free for blessing. This, however, is my blessing, to stand above everything as its own heaven, its round roof, its azure bell, and eternal security. And blessed is he who thus blesseth. For all things are baptized at the font of eternity, and beyond good and evil themselves, however, are but fugitive shadows and damp afflictions and passing clouds. Verily, it is a blessing and not a blasphemy when I teach that, above all things, there standeth the heaven of chance, the heaven of innocence, the heaven of hazard, the heaven of wantonness. Of hazard, that is the oldest nobility in the world, that gave I back to all things. I emancipated them from bondage under purpose. This freedom and celestial serenity did I put like an azure bell above all things, when I taught that over them and through them no eternal will willeth. This wantonness and folly did I put in place of that will, when I taught that in everything there is one thing impossible, rationality. A little reason, to be sure, a germ of wisdom scattered from star to star. This leaven is mixed in all things. For the sake of folly, wisdom is mixed in all things. A little wisdom is indeed possible, but this blessed security have I found in all things, that they prefer to dance on the feet of chance. O heaven above me, thou pure, thou lofty heaven, this is now thy purity unto me, that there is no eternal reason spider and reason cobweb, that thou art to me a dancing floor for divine chances, that thou art to me a table of the gods, for divine dice and dice players. But thou blushest? Have I spoken unspeakable things? Have I abused, when I meant to bless thee? Or is it the shame of being two of us that maketh thee blush? Dost thou bid me go and be silent, because now day cometh? The world is deep, and deeper than ever the day could read. Not everything may be uttered in presence of day, but day cometh, so let us part. O heaven above me, thou modest one, thou glowing one, O thou, my happiness before sunrise, the day cometh, so let us part. Thus spake Zarathustra. The bed-warfing virtue. When Zarathustra was again on the continent, he did not go straightway to his mountains and his cave, but made many wanderings and questionings, and ascertained this and that, so that he said of himself jestingly, Lo, a river that floweth back unto its source in many windings. For he wanted to learn what had taken place among men during the interval, whether they had become greater or smaller. And once, when he saw a row of new houses, he marveled and said, What do these houses mean? Verily, no great soul put them up as its simile. Did perhaps a silly child take them out of its toy box? Would that another child put them again into the box? And these rooms and chambers, can men go out and in there? They seem to be made for silk dolls, or for dainty eaters, who perhaps let others eat with them. And Zarathustra stood still and meditated. At last he said sorrowfully, There hath everything become smaller. Everywhere do I see lower doorways. He who is of my type can still go there through, but he must stoop. Oh, when shall I arrive again at my home, where I shall no longer have to stoop, before the small ones? And Zarathustra sighed and gazed into the distance. The same day, however, he gave his discourse on the bed-warfing virtue. I pass through this people and keep mine eyes open. They do not forgive me for not envying their virtues. They bite at me, because I say unto them that for small people small virtues are necessary, and because it is hard for me to understand that small people are necessary. Here am I like a cock in a strange farmyard, at which even the hens peck, but on that account I am not unfriendly to the hens. I am courteous towards them, as towards all small annoyances. To be prickly towards what is small seemeth to me wisdom for hedgehogs. They all speak of me when they sit around their fire in the evening. They speak of me, but no one thinketh of me. This is the new stillness which I have experienced. Their noise around me spreadeth a mantle over my thoughts. They shout to one another, What is this gloomy cloud about to do to us? Let us see that it doth not bring a plague upon us. And recently did a woman seize upon her child that was coming unto me. Take the children away, cried she, such eyes scorch children's souls. They cough when I speak. They think coughing an objection to strong winds. They divine nothing of the boisterousness of my happiness. We have not yet time for Zarathustra, so they object. But what matter about a time that hath no time for Zarathustra? And if they should altogether praise me, how could I go to sleep on their praise? A girdle of spines is their praise unto me. It scratcheth me even when I take it off. And this also did I learn among them. The praiser doeth as if he gave back. In truth, however, he wanteth more to be given him. Ask my foot if their lauding and luring strains please it. Verily, to such measure and tic-tac, it liketh neither to dance nor to stand still. To small virtues would they fain lure and laud me. To the tic-tac of small happiness would they fain persuade my foot. I pass through this people and keep mine eyes open. They have become smaller, and ever become smaller. The reason thereof is their doctrine of happiness and virtue, for they are moderate also in virtue, because they want comfort. With comfort, however, moderate virtue only is compatible. To be sure, they also learn in their way to stride on and stride forward. That I call their hobbling. Thereby they become a hindrance to all who are in haste. And many of them go forward and look backwards thereby, with stiffened necks. Those do I like to run up against. Foot and eye shall not lie, nor give the lie to each other, but there is much lying among small people. Some of them will, but most of them are willed. Some of them are genuine, but most of them are bad actors. There are actors without knowing it amongst them, and actors without intending it. The genuine ones are always rare, especially the genuine actors. Of man there is little here. Therefore do their women masculinize themselves, for only he who is man enough will save the woman in a woman. And this hypocrisy found I worst amongst them, that even those who command feign the virtues of those who serve. I serve, thou servest, we serve. So chanteth here even the hypocrisy of the rulers, and alas, if the first lord be only the first servant. Ah, even upon their hypocrisy did mine eyes' curiosity alight, and well did I divine all their fly happiness, and their buzzing around sunny window panes. So much kindness, so much weakness do I see, so much justice and pity, so much weakness. Round, fair, and considerate are they to one another, as grains of sand are round, fair, and considerate to grains of sand. Modestly to embrace a small happiness, that do they call submission, and at the same time they peer modestly after a new small happiness. In their hearts they want simply one thing most of all, that no one hurt them. Thus do they anticipate everyone's wishes and do well unto everyone. That, however, is cowardice, though it be called virtue. And when they chance to speak harshly, those small people, then do I hear therein only their hoarseness. Every draught of air maketh them hoarse. Shrewd indeed are they. Their virtues have shrewd fingers, but they lack fists. Their fingers do not know how to creep behind fists. Virtue for them is what maketh modest and tame. Therewith have they made the wolf a dog, and man himself man's best domestic animal. We set our chair in the midst, so saith their smirking unto me, and as far from dying gladiators as from satisfied swine. That, however, is mediocrity, though it be called moderation. I pass through this people and let fall many words, but they know neither how to take nor how to retain them. They wonder why I came not to revile venery and vice, and verily I came not to warn against pickpockets either. They wonder why I am not ready to abet and whet their wisdom, as if they had not yet enough of wiseacres, whose voices grate on mine ear like slate pencils. And when I call out, curse all the cowardly devils in you, that would fain whimper and fold the hands and adore, then do they shout, Zarathustra is godless. And especially do their teachers of submission shout this, but precisely in their ears do I love to cry, Yea, I am Zarathustra, the godless. Those teachers of submission, wherever there is aught puny or sickly or scabby, there do they creep like lice, and only my disgust preventeth me from cracking them. Well, this is my sermon for their ears. I am Zarathustra the godless, who saith, Who is more godless than I, that I may enjoy his teaching? I am Zarathustra the godless. Where do I find mine equal? And all those are mine equals, who give unto themselves their will, and divest themselves from all submission. I am Zarathustra the godless. I cook every chance in my pot, and only when it hath been quite cooked do I welcome it as my food. And verily many a chance came imperiously unto me, but still more imperiously did my will speak unto it. Then did it lie imploringly upon its knees, imploring that it might find home and heart with me, and saying flatteringly, See, O Zarathustra, how friend only cometh unto friend. But why talk I, when no one hath mine ears? And so will I shout it out unto all the winds. Ye ever become smaller, ye small people. Ye crumble away, ye comfortable ones. Ye will yet perish by your many small virtues, by your many small omissions, and by your many small submissions. Too tender, too yielding, so is your soil. But for a tree to become great, it seeketh to twine hard roots around hard rocks. Also what ye omit weaveth at the web of all the human future. Even your knot is a cobweb, and a spider that liveth on the blood of the future. And when ye take, then is it like stealing, ye small virtuous ones. But even among knaves honour saith that one shall only steal when one cannot rob. It giveth itself, that is also a doctrine of submission. But I say unto you, ye comfortable ones, that it taketh to itself, and will ever take more and more from you. Ah, that ye would renounce all half-willing, and would decide for idleness as ye decide for action. Ah, that ye understood my word, Do ever what ye will, but first be such as can will. Love ever your neighbor as yourselves, but first be such as love themselves. Such as love with great love, such as love with great contempt, thus speaketh Zarathustra the godless. But why talk I, when no one hath mine ears? It is still an hour too early for me here. Mine own forerunner am I among this people, mine own cock-crow in dark lanes. But their hour cometh, and there cometh also mine. Hourly do they become smaller, poorer, unfruitfuller, poor herbs, poor earth. And soon shall they stand before me like dry grass and prairie, and verily weary of themselves, and panting for fire more than for water. O blessed hour of the lightning, O mystery before noontide, running fires will I one day make of them, and heralds with flaming tongues. Herald shall they one day with flaming tongues. It cometh, it is nigh, the great noontide. Thus spake Zarathustra.